Another thing I was fascinated with this particular piece was the shadows.
I think one of the things that we've all been fascinated here this week, in addition to this amazing show, is your biography and this idea of an American growing up in Paris and joining the Paris Opera Ballet, something that seems so completely exotic to us. But I'm wondering if you can tell us how you came to start dancing.
So I was doing a lot of stuff. I was doing some soccer and some chess and going to school and fencing and tennis and, and actually I want to do more soccer, but in the age group I was in, it wasn't soccer yet. It was ballet. So I did ballet, and I continued doing ballet for a couple of years.
And did you start at the Paris Opera School?
No, I started in a little conservatory and so on and so forth, and then after a while I wanted to get a bit more serious about it. I went to I was in the conservatory, and there was an examination, and there was a guy who came from the Conservatoire Marius Petipa, and he was really, really good, and all the girls were all around him. They were like, "Oh, you're so good, how did you get so good?" I went to Conservatoire Marius Petipa, and I went to see my mom, and I said, "Mom, I want to go to Conservatoire Marius Petipa."
And you grew up in an American family, but in Paris.
Both my parents are American, and I was born and raised in Paris, and I went to French schools and interacted with French institutions, but I think they passed on a lot of American values.
Your parents passed on, yeah. And we see so much doubling in this concert, doubling of characters, doubling of consciousness in several of the pieces, and I'm curious about if that's autobiographical for you.
I guess what would be being of split minds about something, and being able to look at something from a few different points of view. And I think that's a lot of what you're seeing in this show is a few different takes on the same ideas, and not all being black or white.
Yeah. You call yourself in the program the trickster. Character, and you open with the theater's ghost light. Can you tell us about that image, that startling opening image?
Well, the tricksters are my first characters, and he doesn't do much in this show. Those of you who were here in 2011 probably saw a whole piece around him. And he manipulates people for fun and doesn't really care what happens to them.
Is that a metaphor for a choreographer?
To be honest, I think it's more of a metaphor for how I felt, being directed at the Paris Opera Ballet. The ghost light is what you put here to not fall or not have an accident. And there's always a ghost light when the theater is dark and there's no show. And at the Pillow, there happens to be this incredibly beautiful ghost light you saw. And when I was here last time, I was just fascinated by it, and I would always come when the theater was dark and look at it and think, oh, this is so beautiful, and feel like, wow, this is maybe more beautiful than a lot of the carefully constructed visual effects that we did. So I wanted to put it in, and at the top of the show, I thought it was kind of an idea to... The tricksters, it kind of weaves through the show until they get rid of him manipulating people.
The characters turn against their author. Yes.
He's not really an author.
Oh,
He's just one of the characters. He has a bit more power than some, but as you can see, not that much power. And the ghost light is the theater shifting from being dark to coming alive with the show. So that's that image I was going for, and I decided on it, about in the afternoon of the premiere. So.
But it recurs at the beginning of the second half of the program, in the sense that we suddenly the artifice is revealed. Yes, the effort of the dancers we hear, and what's going on backstage.
Well, that's more what that piece that you saw, Processes of Intricacy, is more what it feels like to dance. For example, in the first piece, which is why we open with it, so they do all this really hard technique, and it looks like they're doing it effortlessly and they're in a good mood and everything. But actually, it's really painful, and you get very much out of breath, and you got to concentrate a real lot, and you're worried about missing something while you're doing it. And we just learn to hide it. And Processes is more about not hiding it. And I think you could hear. I thought Laura was quite out of breath.
When those cues are being called, we know just ahead of that something's coming in that ballet.
Well, hopefully it was supposed to come at the same time.
Yes. It's just
no, I see what you mean, because there's a standbys.
Yeah.
I just like that so much. At the opera, we don't do the same setup that I was doing here. At the opera, what they call the stage manager, it goes over there, and he has a score of the whole show. And since it's very complex shows with a lot of different things being done, he calls everything to everybody. Just anybody who's doing anything. So the cues will go, I don't know the names in English because I usually hear it in French, but machinery do this, props do that, sound do that, lights do that, dancers do that, curtain do that. And there's 10 or 12 different people he can be calling to, and they all call what he told them to all the people they're working with. So there's this whole ballet going on that you don't see. And I just love that.
I've heard you speak a lot this week about transgressions against the rules that you learned at the Paris Opera. And I'm wondering what goes in place of those rules. Do you have rules for yourself?
I have tons of rules for myself. And it's just they're more about doing things rather than not doing things. Certainly, I was really aiming tonight to make a show that was not boring. Which is, thank you, which is pretty hard. And even good ideas tend to be too long. When you have an idea, you don't really know which part of it is good. So a lot of the process is stripping away what's not necessary to come to the simplest formulation of the good idea you had for the stage. And if you don't manage to do that, then it's boring. And it's easier not to do that, and it takes a lot of time, and it's sometimes a little painful. So yeah, to get back to the rules, there's that, and there's trying to be true to who the dancers are, and giving them material that's for them, and not being too safe. I think once you've had a bit of success with something, it's really easy. And I was thinking a lot about those of you who came in 2011, because I really didn't want to. First of all, I didn't want to disappoint you, and I didn't want you to think, oh, well, I preferred last time. But at the same time, I didn't want to just redo what we had already done, because I think that would be disappointing in another sense. So I was trying to think about how not to do what came easily to me, and that's something that I'm often unsatisfied with myself about that. So that's the kind of rules. There's a couple hundred more, but that's the kind of rules that I fix for myself. And at the Paris Opera is more about stay in line.
The Beethoven duet is a remarkable duet, because I feel like there's something so particular about the relationship, that particular relationship. Can you talk to us about that? What was the inspiration for this work?
So it's a companion work to the Chaconne, which I showed in 2011. Chaconne was about a couple going badly and two people driving each other apart, which was where I was personally at that time. And now things are going better for me. No, I wanted to make, because I think there's quite a few duets that are danced. No, I just wanted to make something about a couple that has its ups and downs, but that's an older couple that's lived through a couple of years together, and the intimacy is still there after all those years. And it's, even though there's things that could be not perfect, it's deeply solid. That's what I was going for.
So for you, is it fair to say that directing is as important as choreography?
For me, they're one and the same. There's no separation. And that's something that's very sad, and a mistake that's often made in dance these days, is that even very high-level people in the field can consider, and I'm thinking of ballet masters, that the choreography is the steps. And it's absolutely not true that just because you do exactly the same steps, the effect is going to work the same way. There's a whole host of parameters, starting with the body of the dancer, and who he is in his personality, and how he's feeling that day, and what the stage is, and who his partner is, and what the music is, and how it's being played, and the light, and all these things are going to make an effect work or not work. And so just staying with the steps is the surest way to redo old masterpieces and have them be terrible, for example.
Okay, let's get you into the conversation. Okay, so the question is, how did Sam become a choreographer?
So when I was at the dance school, I didn't have. You're supposed to have a really specific body for the Paris Opera Ballet, which I did not have. So I wasn't considered a very promising pupil. I was just always a step away from getting thrown out. And there was one day in the year where I would really get congratulated, and that was the day when you got to make your own material. You know, the improvisations, which they called it. And I remember making solos where I would try to cram in all the steps I knew and had ever seen in 4 times 8 bars. You know? So that may have been an indication. It's actually funny because I always loved to improvise and create, and I've always been better at making stuff up than doing what somebody else has been telling me. But I didn't actually realize that you could do that, and that was a job, and that was being a choreographer until a couple years after I got into the ballet, and I saw another guy who was a couple years older than me doing it. And up until then, I at the same time I was in studios and I was improvising and I was filming what I was doing, but I had not at all connected the dots and realized that was a job.
The question's about order and disorder, and which is the French side and the American side?
I don't think it's that clear cut. There are some really distinctly American and French things. Like, for example, in France, you can be as good as you want. If you don't have the official diploma from the right school, forget it. And in the States, I feel like as long as you work hard and you can actually do the job, you're fine. And I've gone through that a bit. I've really interacted with those two reactions. So in the States, there's a certain openness about everything, which then translates also into the work and the dance world. But for me, the order and disorder is a lot about the rules. Also, pure ballet is a lot of rules of what you can't do. Down to the shape of your ankle, how the bones are supposed to be. And I don't happen to have the bones in the right shape, and the proportion between this part of your leg and this one, and all sorts of the openness of your hips and what position and what angle and where you should be looking and how your fourth finger should be. So all these rules, and they're necessary for doing good ballet. And if you just follow those rules, you're never going to do anything interesting. At some point, really interesting stuff, creative stuff, you step outside the box. But at the same time, if you're just stepping outside the box and you have no box, that's going to be a really uninteresting evening for you guys.